Merhabalar efendim, Billur TV'ye hoş geldiniz. Bugün çok ilginç bir konuk var karşımda. İsmi Martin Ucik. Belki hatırlarsınız daha önce Beril Hanım'la bir program çekmiştik. Çünkü bu adam dünyayı dolaşıyor ve ilişkilerle ilgili workshoplar veriyor. İlişkiler nasıl bulunur, nasıl tutulur? Çünkü biliyorsunuz çok sorunluyuz bu konuda. Sadece Türkiye'de değil, bütün dünya çok sorunlu. İlişki bulmakta, aşkını bulmakta, o ilişkiyi sürdürmekte. Bu adam yıllarca uğraşmış, çalışmış, didinmiş, kitaplar yazmış ve şimdi dünyayı dolaşıp bu konuda bilgiler veriyor. Şimdi Türkiye'de her hafta sonu insanlara yönelik çok güzel workshoplar yapıyor. İlişki bulmak isteyenler inanılmaz katılımlarda bulunuyorlar. Çünkü biz bunu daha önce de tanıtmıştık ve dönüşleri çok iyi oldu. Arada sırada geliyor, bazen geliyor 6 ay kalıyor. Onun için de biz sizlere Billur TV'den Martin'in yaptıklarını duyurmak istedik. Bir takım konu başlıkları açtık ve onlarla ilgili sorular soracağım. Siz de belki katılmak istersiniz kurslarına diye. Welcome back, Martin. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you for having me on your show.
I introduced you a little bit to our viewers because we had shot a program before about you, but you weren't here. I mean, you weren't in the program, and they wanted to know who you are. And I'm going to talk about your book later on. I didn't tell them about your book yet, and I said we divided some, subjects, and we're going to talk about these. First, do you want to say anything before I ask you my very important question?
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for listening and watching first of all, and being interested in co-creating healthy relationship that makes the world a better place, which I feel extremely passionate about. Because I feel that only if we learn to get along with one person in our life, who we profess to love, and get along at the levels of all 7 chakras, which we may talk a little bit more later, only if we can learn that or relearn that in our modern and postmodern lifestyles that some people in Turkey have, only then can we create a better world where everybody wins and that everybody wants to live in.
So we want smiling people, huh?
Well, we want to be.
Well, we have, I think it's all over the world, not only in Turkey, that we are, it's very difficult to find a perfect partner. Why? Right. Why is that? And how can we create the perfect partner in our lives?
Well, the main reason for that is that until about 50 or 100 years ago, and still for a large part, I don't know how large it really is in Turkey in the population, the church, the government, the parents, the culture basically told us what a healthy relationship is and modeled it for us. And there were clearly divided gender roles. The females had the responsibilities and sometimes the rights in the domestic sphere, taking care of the children. So they did that, and the men had the rights and responsibilities in the public sphere to make money, to protect, to make laws, right? We had patriarchy, or you still have patriarchy to a certain level around the world. And as long as we were in these gender roles, and women really needed to be with a man in order to leave the family and at least, move into a new life, when the most attractive people that sort of found each other, often also depending on their income, their social status, right? The most attractive women got the richest men, and so on and so forth. We had a certain framework in which we raised our kids, and some relationships were good and some were bad. Of course, not all women were happy, but somehow couples were forced to make it work. And very often others chose the partner. And we know from research now that if other people choose a partner for you and you just know, okay, I have to get along with this person, these relationships are often healthier
than if
really we make our own choice, right?
In Turkey, it's like that too. Arranged marriages last much longer than the chosen one.
Yeah, right. Because the criteria by which we choose, if we choose our own, is subjective, right? So we go by our hormones, who we fall in love with, who we're sexually attracted to. While if a third person chooses, they look more at the shared values, the shared lifestyle,
so
and
they're
other
smarter
compatibilities.
Than the one who fell in love anyway. Huh?
Yeah, often who we fall in love with is not really the best indicator.
We lose our minds.
Right, exactly. That's usually the best person to have children with. but usually not the best person to spend the rest of our life with.
But do you think human beings are monogamous? Or they're supposed to be monogamous?
Well, by nature, of course, men want to spread their sperms to as many women as they can. As I sometimes say, men want the one thing from every woman, and women want everything from one man. Right? So there's a tendency on the female side to be more monogamous, and on the male side to be more non-monogamous. But of course, we also, from our long heritage, right, from our animal nature, we also want to eat as much fat and as much sugar as we can, right? So, and there are other impulses, so like our animal impulses, that we're no longer following as human beings with a neocortex, right? So we override a lot of these animal instinctual impulses, like a man having sex with every woman he can, right? Our neocortex tells us that's not a very good way for modern, or for Homo sapiens, for humans, to create functioning societies. And so, there are many natural impulses that we have that we're not living out.
We have it too, not only men.
Yeah. Women, of course, have these natural impulses too, but men have much more testosterone, and we think about sex 10 times more a day than women do.
Well, maybe in the old times. I don't agree with that. I think women think about sex a lot too.
Yeah.
In these days, but they also complain about cheating men a lot, you know. When we searched in Google what's the most asked question about relationships, the top question is, how can I tell a cheating man?
Yeah.
So can we tell a cheating man?
Well,
I mean, or do we have to believe that all men cheat?
I mean, that's already a symptom of a bad relationship.
Yeah,
right? So
I mean, if you're looking for that,
men only cheat if they're not celebrated and appreciated and rewarded by their partners.
You think so?
Absolutely. So
why do women cheat?
Well,
same reasons?
That's the same reason if they're unhappy with their partner. But statistically, conventional and modern women, they cheat usually less than men do. Only when we go into post-modernity, where women go into like liberation around their sexuality as well, then they have as many sex partners or extramarital affairs than men do. But of course, that's a symptom, and as you said, a lot of people here seem to be very concerned about that.
We're so afraid of men, I mean, whenever you talk about men with girlfriends, they always complain about men cheating, and I think it's a judgment towards men because they believe that every man cheats, and I don't believe that. Yeah. I love men.
Oh. I noticed
and I
that a lot.
create the best man, always in my life, because I'm never suspicious or, I just don't name men like that.
Yeah.
I think they're all different.
I mean, that is, of course, something we need to take serious, but instead of complaining, what I noticed here in Turkey versus America is people complain a lot.
Yes, we do.
And they speak a lot in all or nobody, right? Yeah. All men cheat.
Yes.
All women want men who... Yes. This is all or nothing thinking, and it's very externalized. So people, they just make the judgment, all men cheat, but they don't ask the question, what role do they play in? First of all, there need to be other women who they can cheat with.
Yeah, well,
right?
there are,
so,
I guess.
So of course the women are co-creators in that, right? If no woman would sleep with a married man, then there would be no cheating.
Not only married man. I mean, a man who has a girlfriend,
who is
for
in
instance,
a committed relationship, right? And secondly, I had a few of these conversations where it took me really 2 hours until the women finally were able to see the role to play that they play if that actually happens, or if it's even an unwarranted fear, right? It's just a projection on the man. Of course, if you project it on the man, oh, you're going to cheat, then he also feels kind of like off the hook. Oh, she assumes that I'm cheating anyway.
Yeah, so I should cheat.
So why not do it, right?
Make the suspicion, right. But I mean, does it, because after a woman has a child in Turkey,
yes,
they forget about the husband mostly.
Well, that's already a problem
there, right? So isn't that a good
right?
reason to cheat, for instance?
Well, I don't think I'm personally promoting monogamy, going deeper in a relationship. And I mean, I'm very interested in the learning potentials, the healing potentials, the growth potentials, the awakening potentials
How
that we
did you
have as
start
human
this
beings.
business?
You know,
I mean, why and how did you start this business?
well, I was
You weren't
married.
born like this.
Of course, nobody's born like this. I started this through pain, through being heartbroken.
Yeah?
And,
Your wife left you or what?
No, we had a very amicable separation. That was not a problem. The problem was that or it wasn't a problem, it was just the situation that I grew up in a traditional family in Germany, and I was very familiar with the traditional gender roles. And I lived these gender roles in my first two marriages.
So your mother was a housemaker?
Was a
homemaker?
homemaker, yeah, was always at home, and my father was the breadwinner. And so naturally, and they were married for 50 years until my dad passed away. So naturally, I duplicated these patterns, which a lot of people here in Turkey try to duplicate, right? I see that from men, why are women so complicated? And when we moved to California, my wife, and we have 3 children together, we continued that lifestyle. But then when we separated, I started to date postmodern, new age Californian women. And they were financially independent, they were sexually independent, they were emotionally independent.
Just the opposite of what you had
Of
lived
what
all
I had
your life.
lived and learned all my life. And they were very demanding. So when I didn't live up to their expectations, I was the ex in next,
But
so
you
to
said,
speak.
what does it mean when you say demanding? I mean, if a woman is as free as you described her, I mean, financially, physically, or whatever,
Yeah.
what does she demand of? I mean, what does she want from you?
Well, what these women expect, and I don't even blame them for expecting that, is that their life is augmented in all areas of our being. Materially, financially, intellectually.
Even if they make their own money.
Yeah, even if they
So
make their
the
own
minds
money.
haven't changed then.
Huh?
Maybe the style has changed, but the minds haven't
The
changed.
primary fantasy, what I call the primary fantasy, has not changed. That men want younger, sexy women, and women want men with status and power and wealth, with income, so they can improve their lifestyle. But that was not where the relationship ended. These women wanted to have much more in a relationship, and these additional things I didn't really understand.
Did you run away? I mean,
No,
you
I
have 2
went-
kids already.
I went in full head on because
You did.
these women were also very exciting to me, and I could learn from them. And that's how I became, over the last 20 years, who I am today, became a relationship expert by listening to these women, by trying to live up to their expectations. And
Are
that
you a
was
good
very
listener?
good for me. I am. I
Because-
talk a lot now, but
Yes.
I'm also usually a good listener.
Because they always say that women love men who listen to them.
Right.
Because men never listen to women.
But
We talk too
men
much.
listen to women or sell themselves to women through the romance phase, right? And then when the romance phase is over, the women often, or the men hear that women make demands on them,
Or
on the
complaints.
men, or complain or nagging, and then they shut down and they withdraw.
Okay.
Right? And so that is the problem. So relationship problems are always co-created, and that's another thing I observed here in Turkey, is that people complain about the opposite sex.
Yes.
They have very little interest in understanding the opposite sex.
Yes.
And even more so, they don't have a big interest in how they co-create the situation of the relationship that they're in.
Yes,
which
exactly.
means if a woman changes how she relates with her husband is changing.
Yeah, sure.
And what I say is, women are now the new educators of men. And if women learn how to help men to become better men, instead of putting them down and criticizing them and judging them, right? Or you're all cheating, you're so unconscious, you don't listen, right? There's all this projecting, this blaming on men. Of course, the man then withdraws. He feels like a little boy, like being taught by his mother.
And their mother do the same thing. I mean,
Right,
until
they
they're
do the
like
same
35
thing.
years of
Right.
age.
But if the woman understands what the potential is of a man, how he can become a better man, and the man feels, wow, this woman has a real interest to make me a more emotionally
Yes.
available, a more exciting, a more conscious, a more contributing man, then the man really that's a soulmate. That's what I call a soulmate, is a woman, or a man for that matter, who sees the true potential of the soul's potential of the other person and helps him or her to realize their fullest potential. And so what we want to look for in a relationship, if you're relatively evolved, is someone who, when we get to know them, we sense that they have an interest in becoming a better person. And becoming a better person ultimately means that they serve a purpose that is higher than themselves.
In my country, I think we like to criticize people more than we like to compliment them.
Yeah.
We have a hard time complimenting. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But we have a very easy time criticizing.
Yes.
And
to say what
kids are
doesn't
always
work.
criticized too, you know.
And blaming. And so that is that big paradigm shift that I'm specifically teaching in my second book here.
That's a huge book. I mean,
yes.
is it going to come out in Turkey also,
Yeah, so
or is this a shorter version?
We have
of
the
your
first
book?
part, understanding the opposite sex.
Yeah.
In a
It's this
Turkish
one.
version, that's
I want
this one.
to give a small brief to our viewers. Şimdi bu Martin'in yeni kitabı çıkıyor 2 haftaya kadar. When is it coming out exactly?
In about 2 weeks, so
March.
it's early March 2019.
Okay, because I mean when we say 2 weeks, it's
hopefully people will watch
Mart
that in 10
ortası
years.
gibi diyor. Yani değil mi? 2 hafta sonra çıkacak derim. Siz 5 sene beklersiniz. 2 hafta demiştim derim. Mart ortası gibi çıkacak diyor 2019. İntegral partnerlik ve cinsellik kitabın adı. Sağlıklı ilişkiler rehberi. Bunu edinmenizi tavsiye ederim. You think people should read your book and come to your workshops, or come to your workshops and read the book
Either
later
way,
on?
yeah. It's important. If you read the book, it's most interesting if you had different relationship experiences.
Diyor ki mesela daha önceden ilişkiler yaşadıysanız kitabı okuyup benim workshoplarıma gelebilirsiniz. Çünkü zaten bu kitabı okuyacak olan adam bir şeyler yaşamıştır hayatında diyor.
Because then as you read the book, you will see, oh, that happened in this relationship, that happened in that relationship. Or you may see, oh, that's something I haven't even experienced yet. So the more experiences you had, the more the book will resonate with you, the more you will get out of the book.
If you're not experienced, I mean not experienced enough, let's say,
then the book will basically tell you what you may experience. Like in school, of course, we get prepared for certain things that we will experience later. But it's a bit of a dry read, I admit. But if you had the experiences, then that will, I mean, people have these huge aha effects when they go like, oh my God, this was happening. My wife or my partner had a different love language, or was at a different level of consciousness, or we were both too much in our masculine energy, and so on and so forth. All the areas of human growth and potential that I cover in the book. But if you haven't had these experiences, then of course it's just like reading about eating a strawberry if you never ate a strawberry before. Right?
So,
or
but
you
I
read
mean,
a travel book and you never went to that country, so it can be helpful to read a travel book first, but it will be much more meaningful if you already had an experience, right, of a different culture, a different country. And that's the same with
we always prefer
books.
reading before we go to a place, because it's not like experiencing the place, but you at least know what the flag looks like and what the language is and how many people live there, and maybe they have some customs that you're not used to and stuff like that.
And it's also a workbook for couples. So I actually married some couples who decided to get married after they read the book because they had a very clear roadmap. I had a woman from Pakistan who said, I have not met my future husband, but I will get married in 2 weeks, or in a few weeks. And she was scared. And a friend of mine in the US sent her my book, and she wrote me and said, now I know what to expect from my marriage after reading your book, and I'm relaxed and I'm open. I mean, that was like so heartwarming.
She was probably so scared if she was
scared.
a virgin. Can you imagine?
Yeah. And so there are certain worksheets in there that couples can do together about shared interests, shared values, shared passions. And
you have also pictures and,
there are graphics in there.
Yeah.
There are some lists in there that people can fill out.
And some homework to do.
Pardon?
Some
homework
homework
to do, exactly. And there's also a list of references of books in there where I was drawing from. I read about 200 relationship books that I integrated into this book.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's so many books here. Burada arkasında da bu arada kitabın bütün kaynakçaları var. Yani buradaki kitapları alıp okumaya çalışsak herhalde ömrümüz yetmez gibi bir şey. Hiç hep ilişkilerle falan ilgili. Ama tabii bulabildiklerinizi de alıp okuyun diyeceğim. Çünkü ben de çok merak ettim. Benim de konularım hep bunlar olduğu için bu kaynakçadaki kitapların hangileri varsa Türkiye'de almak istiyorum. Is there anything? Tell me about your workshops. When are they? And I mean.
So we have, while I'm here, and
Okay.
I plan to come back frequently to Turkey, so we have a weekend workshop.
Every weekend you have workshops?
We have, let's start with, we have every weekend we have a 3-hour little meetup where we cover one topic, and I can hold this into the camera real quick here. You see that we broke down the whole integral relationship model into 13 modules. So every week we cover a different module. And then we have a weekend workshop where we cover 11 of the 13 modules. So that in 2 days, and they're all experiential, so there's very little teaching, but each element has an exercise where people either in a group or with a partner do an exercise, so they really have an experience. When they walk away, we all fall in love with each other during that weekend, and they have a clear sense of how a healthy integral relationship really feels, not only in their head, but in their heart and in their gut. And that's very important to me. And now they had the feeling, now they can practice this in their dating or in their relationship. And then we have a 5-day training where we go into more depth, and that is for professionals, for people
that's
who
for
are
trainers,
therapists, coaches, or people who want to go into that profession. And that's followed by a 14-week, once a week online follow-up where people then really work with singles or couples.
Did you do that before in Turkey?
Yes,
the 5-day?
Yeah. So we did
there
that in
are some
May.
coaches now in Turkey?
Yeah, there are already coaches that are trained in that area.
Do you control them? I mean, do you see them when you come back to Turkey once?
Some of them, I met, but others, I'm not in touch with them. So I mean, that's their choice, of course. But that's my ideal situation, to continue to be in touch with them as they develop.
Yeah, I think that you should, because maybe you're going to teach something new. Maybe you should renew your workshops for them too.
Yeah. So that next training will be from May 1st to May 5th in 2019. And then I plan to come back maybe once or twice a year to do a weekend workshop and then a 5-day training.
Good for you. We'd like to see you in Turkey, you know. We really need you here.
That's what people say, and I'm very happy to be here. And if you want to read more about all that, my website is integralilişkiler.com. So we have a fully...
in Turkish, integralilişkiler.com.
Yeah, we have a fully translated Turkish website, which has also videos and has a lot of the material is also on the website, and that has all the dates and so on and so forth.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming, because we have 3 more to shoot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Şimdi hem size biraz Martin'i tanıtalım dedik, hem kitabından bahsedelim, kurslarından bahsedelim. Ama başka sorularım da var kendisine. Onları da kısa kısa soracağım, seyredersiniz.